Time for another non-Thrones vid, Tom. And since you chose the last topic, that means it's my turn, right? Right. What do you mean Cal 9000 over in our Discord server made a better suggestion than my idea to cover the ironclad theory that Mace Windu is Anakin's biological father?
What? This is outrageous.
That was a winning idea! Okay, let's do Cal's choice. Today we're ranking the most skilled lightsaber duelists from the prequel era of Star Wars. Note, we're using the word skilled, not powerful, because that always becomes a game of putting Mace Windu at number 3, then arguing with yourself whether or not you want to piss off the Yoda fanboys or the Sidious ones when deciding the number 1. We know Sidious and Yoda are the most powerful overall. It's honestly a bit boring at this point. So let's talk about lightsaber skill for a change, and by this I mean if you were to level the playing field when it came to the Force, so everyone had similarish speed, strength, and foresight, who would actually be the best when it came to pure swordsmanship alone? Note, we're not taking the Force away completely, because some of the, shall we say more seasoned duelists need it in order to get past one swing and not need to take a toke on an oxygen tank before the next one. We're just flattening the power curve the Force brings so dueling skill becomes more important.
Legends or canon?
Why Legends, of course, my good man.
So canon.
Like and subscribe buttons are down there, and Discord is right here. And a quick thanks to Cal 9000 for the suggestion, and let's just jump straight in, Tom. At number 5, it's Darth Sidious, aka Emperor Palpatine, aka Sheev, aka the Senate, aka... Shh, can you hear that, Tom? That is the sound of Palpatine fanboys scurrying from the dark corners of the web to come and yell about how wrong we are. Basking in their indignation is like basking in the dark side itself. Remember guys, we're talking about skill here, not power. And Palpatine, while good enough to be in the top tier, isn't really all that skilled of a lightsaber duelist compared to his peers. And the reason for this is that, there's no other way to say it really, he's just downright lazy with it. He gets by on the fact he can use the Force to make himself so blindingly fast that skill becomes near irrelevant. His technique doesn't have to be refined or elegant if he can just stab and slice most opponents to shreds before they can react. So why on earth would he waste time refining and innovating his skills when just savagely hacking and stabbing at your enemy until something gets through has served you well thus far? There's a popular saying, speed kills. Just ask those Nimrods who were frozen solid watching Palpatine strike them down one by one. And yes, we know the Force Scream had something to do with it also. Calm your nerd hate boner. Take away that speed though, and what you have is a rather sloppy, out-of-practice rendition of the 7 classical forms. Another thing to consider is Palps has no love for the art itself, and saw lightsaber dueling as nothing more than him mocking what he saw as
a Jedi's weapon.
He mastered the 7 forms during his training and kind of left it there, preferring to devote his time to politics and the more arcane aspects of the Force. Seriously, if you think about it, when did this guy actually get the time to practice and work on his skills? Dude had other priorities, you know, like getting elected to the Senate, abusing the system to become the head of the Senate, secretly creating an army of child soldiers, abusing the system some more to get some more special powers, then using said special powers to start a war he needs to manage and manipulate from both sides, and then use said war to wipe out his Order's ancient enemy. Guy's got a lot on his plate. I'm not sure saber drills were at the top of his to-do list, and I don't really blame him. A great point of evidence for Sidious's lack of skill is when he comes up against opponents who can actually match, or at the very least keep up with his speed. Twice in the movies we see this happen, and twice in the movies Sidious is driven onto his back foot. Something not known to watchers of the films is that Yoda actually overpowered and disarmed Sidious of his lightsaber off-screen. The Dark Lord's retreat wasn't actually voluntary. Our little green friend was pressing him hard when it came to the laser swords, despite the evil cackles, and he got a swift kick to the face with his defeat to Windu. So with this in mind, we at the fandom feel that, yep, Palpatine is good. Good enough to be top tier. He did master all 7 forms with a prodigy's ease after all, and was considered a natural by his master. But man, he is scrambling to earn his place among the elite, at least where raw skill is concerned anyway. Practice makes perfect, old man. On to our number 4 pick, and it's my second favorite little green frog dude. Sorry, but Grogu is just too... oh, goo. It's Grandmaster Yoda. Yoda, much like Sidious, has mastered all 7 forms, but unlike Sidious, Yoda has practiced and drilled his techniques to perfection. Every stroke of his saber is a flawless rendition of the techniques found in the 7 classical forms of lightsaber combat. Favoring Form 4 Ataru, Yoda could overwhelm all but the very best and most elite duelists in a matter of seconds, with even the Dark Lord himself shitting his robe at the prospect of crossing blades with his little green friend and preferring retreat. Only one Jedi is known to have defeated him in a friendly sparring duel, that being the underrated legend that is Plo Koon, and it was only once, so you could float the word fluke in with that statement with nothing to refute it. So then, why doesn't Yoda get the number 1 spot? We've hyped him up to be the pinnacle of technique with every form, and he's basically undefeated minus a small scuff in training with Plo. You see, the thing is, Yoda lacks creativity in his forms. He is the most extreme example of a traditionalist as you can find. He doesn't blend, he doesn't mix and match, and he doesn't add any of his own flavors to the forms to take them up a gear. If he needs overwhelming offense, he employs a textbook execution of Ataru. If he needs impeccable defense, he will employ a textbook version of Surisu. If he needs to sweep the battlefield, textbook Shi-Cho. If he needs to employ the Force while dueling, he'll swap over to textbook Naiman, and if he needs, well, I think you get the idea. To expose my age a little here, Yoda is that Gen 1 Pokemon trainer that plays rock, paper, scissors with their lineups, pulling out a water Pokemon to deal with their opponent's fire Pokemon, using ground to deal with electric, grass to deal with water, etc, etc. But what about when the opponent busts out a Mewtwo, or an Alakazam, or basically any strong Psychic Pokemon, because as those my age will well know, that Psychic was so unbelievably broken back in the day that many a Game Boy was casually thrown out of the window or flushed down the toilet as a result of rage-induced frustration. This is also Yoda. He's got many a tool for many a job when it comes to dueling, but they're all stock standard bought from the hardware store. He doesn't have those little self-made gizmos that you made that one time to do one very specific task that your shed is now full of. And this is why Yoda doesn't get number 1. He's the absolute best there is at what's already there. But there's no innovation, no creativity, or originality. So if you took away his overwhelming power in the Force and equalized it with a duelist who can bring that little something extra with their technique and more customized form, he's likely to run into trouble fast if none of the classical forms have an answer for it. Luckily for Yoda, you can count the number of lightsaber masters who have that little something extra in their form and have the Force power to match him on one hand. And that's counting the entire expanded universe, by the way. Our number 3 pick is little Anakin Skywalker, with a little nod to his master as well. Quite possibly the most polarizing character when it comes to fan opinion of his abilities. Some believe Anakin is highly overrated and would get beaten by the likes of Ahsoka, others believe he is criminally underrated and was on par with Yoda and Sidious when it came to overall power and lightsaber skill. So where do we stand at the fandom? You know what, Tom? For once, let's climb down off this fence instead of trying to appease both sides. Anakin by Revenge of the Sith is extremely underrated, and those who say he's on par with the likes of Sidious and Yoda are genuinely not a million miles off. At least when it comes to the Legends canon, which we're using for this video. If you're using Legends, then most fans will agree that the word of the great creator, known in our universe as George Lucas, is kind of the gospel. During the making of Revenge of the Sith, he put many of the prominent Jedi and Sith into numbered tiers for their power, so Nick Gillard, one of the great creator's prophets, and also the guy in charge of the lightsaber choreography, could factor this into the fights. Basically, Kenobi was a solid 8, Dooku and Mace Windu were high 8s, and Yoda and Sidious were flat 9s. For those wondering who achieved a 10, I think probably only Grandmaster Luke would have been worthy, because Grandmaster Luke in Legends was busted as But where was little Annie? Believe it or not, he was also considered a 9. Now, this was taking into account him using the dark side, but still, Anakin is clearly up near that level as a swordsman. Now, at the fandom, we're not the biggest proponents of the word of God being the lone basis for an argument. In all honesty, it's one of the weakest arguments someone can make in most cases, as authors can often contradict themselves or their story, and sometimes they can just be objectively wrong in their statements. So, on its own, it's weak source. However, if the word of God is backed up by feats of the character or moments within the story, it becomes a much stronger piece of evidence. And oh boy, Anakin does not let his creator down. Mastering both variants of Form 5 with a slight bias towards Gemso, but also blending in elements of Ataru to help his mobility, and his master Sarisu to create his own custom form. Anakin crossed blades with and defeated Count Dooku, perhaps the...
Shut up.
Though admittedly he relied heavily on his stronger connection to the Force and tapping into the dark side to take the win. But hey, even just hanging with Dooku as a swordsman at all is insane. To further back up Anakin's saber skills being off the charts is this very small detail that those who have only watched the movies might completely disregard. See this little scene of Anakin on his temple rampage here? Notice that guy with the green lightsaber? That's Sin Dralik, the battle master of the Jedi Order, one of the Order's greatest lightsaber duelists, who was so skilled Dooku didn't think General Grievous would even have a prayer of beating him. And this was back when Grievous was legitimate Jedi nightmare fuel, not the laughingstock Saturday morning cartoon he later became. Dralik was a master of all 7 forms, and his academic knowledge of the forms was considered only second to Yoda. You know something, Tom? Sod Sidious, let's give this guy his spot. It seems like he wants it more.
There's one lesson you've yet to learn. How to become one with the Force.
Anyway, Sin Dralik was all of these things and definitely someone to take seriously when crossing blades. And here Anakin is casually dealing with him like he's almost an afterthought while he deals with other pesky treasonous Jedi. Of course, the Force is playing its part, but Anakin is outnumbered here and he's still keeping step. Raw skill is definitely still playing its part. Anakin was good. Really good when it came to lightsaber skills. Hashtag change my mind. Also, Annie, you're going to have to share this spot with your master because I couldn't decide which one of you was more skilled. Obi-Wan in Legends by Revenge of the Sith was a complete menace when it came to lightsaber dueling. Due to his complete era-defining mastery of Form 3 Sarisu, he was pretty much invincible when it came to lightsaber combat alone. And if you didn't have the strength in the Force to just power through his Force defenses and grab him, you were not going to be defeating him. Nor would he defeat you. You would end up hammering away at the human equivalent of a brick wall until you defeated yourself. When crossing blades with Kenobi, power in the Force isn't your edge, it's your only hope. At number 2, it's the galaxy far, far away's baddest mofo, Mace Windu. Few come more deadly than Mace Windu when it comes to swordsmanship alone. In the new lore, he is a very clear second to Yoda when it came to lightsaber skills and force power. In Legends, it wasn't as clear-cut, at least regarding lightsaber skills. Some authors said Yoda, others went with Windu, and in my personal opinion, I always thought it made more sense for Windu to be the better sword fighter and Yoda the more powerful space wizard. Mace mastered all 7 forms of lightsaber combat to the nth degree, but unlike Yoda, who decided the classical styles were fine and left it there, Mace got a little bored and decided to get creative beyond even the mix and match customizations of Anakin. Reflecting on his personal weaknesses, that being his enjoyment of combat and the inner darkness he harbored within himself, he took Form 7 Juyo, stripped it down to its base elements, and created a brand new lightsaber form, which we did a video on over here if you're interested. Please watch it, our Star Wars videos need all the help they can get. Even if stripping away the elements of the form that feed off of the Force and make it Sith kryptonite, the pod is truly lethal, and takes a great deal of skill and focus just to use, let alone master. With its randomized attack vectors and savage offense, Mace wholeheartedly believed the only person who could reliably defeat a master of the pod in lightsaber combat was the creator of the form. You know, himself. This was shown during the novel Shatterpoint, where he adamantly refused to let anyone go to arrest his former apprentice Deepa Balaba, who had gone rogue and was the only known student to have mastered the form apart from Mace himself. You know a form is dangerous when the only one who could be trusted to deal with it safely is its creator. It's this innovation to lightsaber combat, combined with the fact he was the only Jedi with the skill and restraint to master the incredibly demanding form without falling to the dark side, that puts Mace almost into a league of his own in our opinion. He can bring that something new and unpredictable, and he can bring that something special that goes beyond mere pick and mix, and if you're not careful, it could catch you off guard, as Palpatine had to find out the hard way. Oof, this will take some beating, Tom. Now, when we do viewer-suggested vids, we'll always include their personal pick as an honorable mention if they don't make the list for us. However, there is no need for that today because Cal's thoughts align with our own, and that is the #1 most skilled lightsaber duelist for the prequel era is Count I'm So Badass I Need Christopher Lee to Play Me Dooku. Remember, we are discussing raw skill with the lightsaber here. When the Force cannot be used to bully an advantage, like is the case with Sidious, Yoda, Anakin, Mace, and even to some extent Obi-Wan, whose most badass feats with the saber required him to put his fate in the hands of the living Force, we believe no one can hold a candle to the fallen Count of Serrano. Dooku is swordsmanship and fencing personified, and were the playing field leveled when it came to power in the Force, he could likely outfence Yoda and Sidious combined, and still have some oomph left in the tank to take on Anakin and Obi-Wan. Dooku never mastered all 7 forms like some of our other picks, opting to study Form 2 pretty much exclusively. But while it might sound counterintuitive, that actually goes in his favor more than you think. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, is it better to be good at many tricks, or really, really good at just a few? Or if you prefer, since we're talking about fighting, the famous Bruce Lee quote paraphrased, you should not fear the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, you should fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. This is very apt for Dooku. Mace innovated and refined Form 7 into something totally unique and new to answer for his own personal weaknesses, whereas Dooku innovated and refined Form 2 into something wholly his own to answer for the Form's weaknesses. Through meticulous refinement, Dooku didn't just master Makashi, he perfected it, systematically stamping out every weakness to be found within the form. Dealing with blast deflection, which is known to be the form's primary weakness, became little more than a mild inconvenience to the Count. Multiple opponents became multiple chances to practice one's footwork, and Dooku even managed to refine Makashi so it could outfence someone using Form 5, which is often accepted to be the direct counter to Form 2. So much so that Anakin had to tap into the dark side to such a degree that his blows hit with the force of a meteorite before he could take the upper hand. It also helps that Makashi is the only lightsaber form that emphasizes practice, skill, and technique over releasing oneself into the Force, like Shicho and Sarisu, or using the Force to bolster the sequences like you find with forms like Ataru. It's the only form in which you could, in theory, strip away the Force from the duelist entirely and still be left with a deadly skilled swordsman capable of messing you up. And Dooku is the undisputed champion of this form, maybe for all time, not just the prequels. But what made Dooku truly the most skilled swordsman of his era was his unmatched ability to consistently capitalize on moments of opportunity. See, in Legends, those who learned lightsaber forms tended to learn the techniques in structured sequences, a bit like the katas present in Kenjutsu, or if you're unfamiliar with Japanese swordsmanship, kind of like the choreography for a dance. This is because lightsaber fights move at superhuman speeds. Your offense and your defense kind of needs to be more rote response rather than a conscious decision. However, Dooku recognized this could make you much more predictable than you'd ideally like to be in a life and death battle, referring to this mindset as enslavement to form. In response to this, he said, nah, and personalized his technique so it could always take advantage of opportunities presented in the moment, allowing him to disrupt and off-balance his opponent's flow and poke and cut at the openings it would create, and in doing so, making himself perhaps the most unpredictable duelist of the bunch, with only really Mace and his Vapad coming close to matching this unpredictability. Dooku was a master fencer through and through, with or without the Force. He'd be the last person you'd ever want to cross blades with if the Force suddenly stopped being a thing. And because of this, he takes that top spot. And that's our take. Who do you think were the greatest swordsmen of the Legends prequel era in terms of raw skill and nothing else? Should Maul have made the list, or Shaak Ti, or Plo Koon? Let us know your thoughts.